Well, welcome to the nonStatic podcast, where we explore how to keep moving forward when motivation feels distant. Here, we dive into finding peace and fulfillment in a busy world, discovering how to embrace life's opportunities to live with purpose and joy. This podcast the nonStatic name brand was started by Dr. Josh Beulke. Josh, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, and I'm Jon Beulke. We're brothers. Josh is a psychologist, and I am a business owner and CFO for our mental health company. And we decided to start this nonStatic podcast just to share some good news with people and some perspective on life.
It's really about perspective.
Yeah.
Yep. Not necessarily giving anything new, but exploring different perspectives and ways that we can live more full, I guess.
Yeah. Where do you think? It seems like a lot of times people get. It seems like people really like analogies, or I don't know if like a parable is the right word, but people like stories.
Yeah, they're more. I consider more of a comparison, maybe.
A comparison. There we go.
To help drive a point home.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Because then you don't have to go through so much work trying to figure out a concept to boil it down.
If it makes it easier, I guess there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's more about taking a complex concept and simplifying it in a way that you can latch on to.
Sure.
The way our brains work and our memories work is we remember things best when we have an association. So, for example, one memory technique that some people are told to use is called the mnemonic device. If you're trying to remember something, is to picture a room in your house, or a room in your brain, I should say. Mm-hmm. And then if you're supposed to remember specific concepts, to picture yourself putting the concepts at various locations in the room. And actually, that's a way for your brain to remember something better. So that's kind of how it works.
I've tried doing that before, and it always seems like I forget to, because like I would like look at a room.
Yeah.
There's many different variations of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
One variation that I learned about was if whatever room you're in, there you are. And so if you want to remember something while you're in the room, you look at an object like there's a little picture over there with a picture frame. I could put I could think of that picture frame and then tell myself to remember to, one of my daughter's birthdays, or something.
Yeah. But
I'm like, a few minutes later, I'll look at that picture and I'll be like, well, what did I associate that picture with?
Right.
So sometimes there's like.
Well, a mnemonic device, and maybe we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's more of a mental representation. So you're not going to actually look at that physical picture. I'm talking about in your mind, you would develop a room, and then mentally decorate it, so to speak, with different concepts that you're trying to remember. So you have a birthday room, and in that room you set it up the way you want in your mind, and then you would place various things there. So your anniversary date, for example, may go on the fireplace on the mantle above the fireplace, for example, in the room, just as an example. And then every time you mentally open the room, you'd see it there. And your brain associates then the picture of the mantle above the fireplace with your anniversary date, which is...
Oh, October 10th.
Okay.
I'm sorry, August 10th. We're in October now. It's August 10th, 2013. Amanda, I did not forget.
Job. Yes. Good
job. 11 years this year. Man. All right, and she's stuck with me for that long. That's awesome.
It is a miracle.
Yeah. So one perspective that in a recent newsletter that you published, the title was "Wet Cement."
Yes. Yep.
What's cement all about, and how does that relate to our perspective about daily living?
I was really thinking about the different experiences that we have in life and how those different experiences go together to kind of create who we are as individuals. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you and I are brothers. We grew up together, but our life tracks are slightly different. We each had different experiences that we interpreted differently, and all those kind of go into the pot, so to speak, to develop our own unique personalities. Mm-hmm. So trying to think out a way to to kind of drive that point home, and the idea I came up with was that our lives are kind of like wet cement. And so if you think of wet cement, or when a freshly poured patio or sidewalk, for example,
It looks so good.
it looks great, it looks smooth, and that's the way our lives are when we're born. But over the course of time, we have different experiences, different opportunities in life, different situations that we encounter. Some of them good, some of them bad. Some of them really good, some of them really bad, and some just kind of in between. And each of those events, whether they're good or bad, have some kind of imprint on our lives. And similar to wet cement, when you put your handprint in the wet cement, it leaves a imprint of your hand there. That becomes a permanent part of the patio or sidewalk or whatever.
Sometimes there's unwelcome things that go in the
Yeah.
cement too. Like I watched a YouTube video once of all these random animals running
Yeah.
across wet cement. It's actually quite funny.
Yeah.
Especially I saw one with a whole bunch of chickens
Yep.
running around. Like the context was like, what do we do? And it was a massive. It was actually, ironically, it was a garage, and it was like, how do chickens
How do they
get into
do
a
a garage?
garage? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
Well,
But
the whole
anyways.
point is, for some of those small things like the footprint, we've probably walked down a sidewalk and seen a random footprint that somebody stepped in it before it had fully cured.
Sure.
And that's there forever. It doesn't really impact the strength of the sidewalk, but it nonetheless is a permanent trait that's now in the sidewalk, at least until
Sure.
someone tears it up.
Yeah.
And that's what our different experiences are. Some of them are more traumatic or difficult, and they have obviously a bigger impact on our lives, and some of them are less. But each situation we encounter impacts our lives and how our lives change. And the key with this is that our lives are kind of like wet cement. The different situations we have, they imprint on our lives, and then that impacts our decisions. It impacts who we become as people, because our brains are constantly learning and constantly adjusting to our environments. And so it's just important for us as people going through life and its various ups and downs, that we keep in mind that each thing that we encounter tends to change us in some way or another. And it's important to keep that all in perspective. Sometimes the challenge is when we face a difficult situation that's challenging, which we all do. No matter how successful people are perceived to be, we all have our challenges in life that get us down or create problems for us. Our natural tendency is to focus on only the bad stuff. And just like if you have a freshly poured stamped patio, if you were to find one little blemish in a stamped patio and focus in on it, that's all you'd see, and you would miss the beauty that is the entire stamped patio.
Yeah, that is true. I
Yep.
I actually just got my driveway repaved with. We had some issues with a main sewer line. It was kind of gross in our neighborhood, but they had to dig up my driveway and replace it from asphalt to cement. And when we laid down the cement, it was beautiful. It was perfect. We even put my family, we all put our little handprints on there. And when after it dried, then we started seeing a lot of imperfections, and it's not really perfect. It wasn't what we thought it was going to be. It's still really nice driveway. Yeah. But we do notice all the imperfections. Yeah. And sometimes we kind of focus on it, and like you said, we kind of miss out on the fact that we do have a really nice driveway. Yeah. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, and like I say, the challenge, the problem we all have is our brains are naturally inclined to focus on what's wrong in our lives, and sometimes to the exclusion of what's going right. And so when we do that, we kind of miss the larger picture. Yeah. Whereas if we were to zoom out and look at our lives as a whole, we would realize, if the situation that I'm faced with that is a challenge or difficult, is it fun to go through? No. Is it kind of miserable? Probably. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, it's going to become a smaller part of your life than it appears to be in the moment. So the whole idea of this analogy of wet cement is to kind of appreciate kind of what we've been through, and then realize that our lives are really kind of a tapestry of different events that become uniquely us. Right. And the goal is to kind of zoom out and kind of appreciate or realize that to look at our lives as a whole, rather than just look at our life as the entirety of a difficult situation.
Yeah.
Our lives are really a combination of everything we've been through, both the good and the bad.
Do you think we kind of have a tendency to be pessimists in general with our own personal lives?
I think for some people, yeah. I think what I'd say is our brains are naturally inclined to look for danger or things that are wrong in the environment because one of the goals of our brain is to keep us alive and to keep us safe.
Sure.
And so we are going to notice the negative much more easily than the positive because
Right.
the positive, while it's good, it doesn't pose a threat to us necessarily, and so our brains are naturally going to focus on what's wrong
Right.
rather than what's right. And so the work comes in when we try to shift our focus to not ignoring difficult situations or challenges that we face, but putting them in the proper context.
Not putting so much weight on them, even if they are traumatic or very difficult experiences.
Yeah.
You know, there's in many cases. I mean, I know there's some people that have just had just horribly affected lives and in a negative way. But and it's so easy to look only on the bad stuff. But there is a glimmer of hope and like a silver lining to most situations. I know some things are just horrible, but I would say probably as a general rule that our lives are generally have a lot of positive events in them. I mean, especially when I mean, I don't know if this is related to what I was just saying, but like we always have a tendency to look at our biggest failures and focus in on those and the things that we're disadvantaged of or things that we struggle with or challenging things that we've been a part of. And we always look at everyone's positives. I know it's kind of like an age-old, it's kind of a really worn down statement. Like, oh, we always see everyone's highlight reels on social media, and that's what we usually tell to other people, especially strangers, like on social media. And we always compare ourselves to everyone's perfect wet cement.
Well.
It seems like, right?
Yeah, the big challenge with social media, and it's great to be connected with everybody, but it's very easy to project a very specific image on social media. And typically, I mean, there are some people, I guess, that air their dirty laundry out to the world sometimes on Facebook and
some
Instagram.
People like that attention, I guess.
Yep, it's kind of an attention-seeking thing, but typically people project only the good things, and so there's some people on there that you won't hear anything on them on social media for a long time, and then they'll post a new car, and you assume that their lives are filled with new cars and buying great things and so forth. When the reality is that's really not what's going on.
Right, they could be barely keeping afloat or.
Yeah, but something you said, we all kind of go through difficult things in life. You are correct, and I'm not trying to minimize genuine trauma that people have gone through because there's certainly very extenuating circumstances that would rise to the level of severe trauma, child abuse, spousal abuse. And the idea of the wet cement analogy is not to minimize trauma. If someone's gone through genuine trauma, that actually changes the chemical makeup of our brains and can really have the potential to impact us very negatively. So if someone's gone through trauma, certainly I'm not saying to just look on the bright side of things, because certainly there's some times in which people have gone through things that require more professional help, and I'd certainly encourage people to seek that out. But even with that, the comparison kind of holds true, because if someone's gone through trauma, that's horrible, and I don't wish that on anyone, but it does change their lives in the same way other situations change their lives, but just to a greater degree. And so it's important that if you have experienced trauma or someone's experienced trauma, to get the help that you need for it. With the goal of like trauma treatment is to not pretend that trauma didn't exist or didn't happen, but it's figuring out a way to acknowledge that it happened, work through it in a way that can arrive at some form of resolution, and then be able to move on with your life despite having been through it. So if you use the wet cement analogy, someone that's gone through significant trauma, for example, it may be like somebody drove a car into the wet cement, and it's obviously going to leave a much bigger mark on their lives, but it doesn't mean that's their whole life, right? It's certainly a horrible part that they've gone through, but I believe with the resiliency of people and getting the proper help that people can move on from that. So again, the goal of the wet cement analogy is not to stick our heads in the sand and ignore that trauma does exist, but it's putting it in the proper context.
Sure.
To enable us to live our best lives possible.
That makes sense. Like you use the analogy of a car driving through a patch of wet cement, and comparing that to trauma. When someone has, so that's a permanent mark, unless the contractors or the cement layers. I don't know if they're cement layers or masons or I'm not
Cement
sure.
contractors.
Cement contractors. We'll do that. And they, if it's the wet cement, the contractors, I would think that they could, if they're still there, they could try to repair it. But let's just say that it was done and over with. They're gone. Someone drove through it, like the trauma, and it's like that's a permanent piece of their life,
Right.
of that cement's life. And you have a couple of options: try to repair it. Or, I don't know if you can repair that with concrete or wet cement after it dries, or if you have to just like tear it up and start over, kind of a thing. Is there any type of like analogy that can be made with someone who experiences like a trauma, like that would be like tracks permanently, messing up their cement?
Yeah.
How can they address that and still I don't want to say recover or be able to handle their trauma. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yep. Trauma therapists would kind of tell you there's two general tracks to deal with trauma.
Okay.
And it really depends on the person. The two ways to go about it are one, to never talk about it again. The rationale with that, certainly as mental health professionals don't recommend that, because the belief is that the body keeps score and that you have to resolve that somehow. But
Sure.
The idea of not talking about it is, some people would say, I've been through this trauma. I don't need or want to relive it anymore.
Right.
So I'd rather not talk about it. Okay. That's kind of the analogy of the car drove into the wet cement, and the cement hardened, and we realized it was there, and so they came in and refilled it and just kind of minimized it. So the imperfection or the blemish of the car driving the cement is still there. It's just been covered up by new cement, but it's still underneath the surface.
Sure.
Whereas what trauma therapists really try to do is not wanting the person to relive the trauma over and over, but the goal is to help treat them or to help them work through it to a standpoint that it's integrated into part of their lives. You can never forget trauma, obviously.
Right.
Your brain won't let you forget it.
Right.
Even though it may on a conscious level in some scenarios forget it, but it's always going to be there. The whole goal that trauma therapy has is to help them process or deal with the trauma that they've been through and integrate that experience into their lives in a healthy way.
Sure.
Obviously, there's no healthy way for someone to experience trauma, but in the aftermath of it, we can work through how to handle it so that it becomes a part of our life. And so in that analogy, it's maybe the tire sinking into the wet cement is still there, but they've created it and integrated it as part of their greater tapestry of life. So the more life they experience, the smaller and smaller that trauma piece becomes over time.
That's a good way to look at it.
And so that's really, in a very simple way of putting it,
Sure, right,
you know, how trauma therapists try to look at trauma. But again, not to focus too much on the trauma pieces, you know, at the end of the day, if someone's gone through trauma and has successfully resolved it, you know, that becomes a part of their life. It doesn't mean that it rules their entire life, but it's become a part of their life. And people that are able to successfully recover from trauma, and we're all different, and we all go about that and get to that point in life differently. But people that have successfully resolved their trauma and have integrated it into their lives are able to look at the at their lives as a whole, like we would look at a patio as a whole, rather than just focusing on this one specific area.
Sure.
So someone that's been through trauma, that's resolved it, would be able to look at their trauma in the context of their larger life. That makes sense.
That makes sense. And it's, it can, the perspective thing can really be helpful too. I mean, I believe that nearly all very challenging, very hard, emotional, devastating circumstances, as hard as they are, they can still be used for good.
Right.
One example is I had, as you know, probably going on almost 20 years ago now. No, about 15 some years ago now. I ended up with I had some pretty significant health issues.
Yeah.
To some cases, in a couple points, there was a point where my doctors were talking to my parents about, planning what's going to happen when I pass away.
Sure.
Thankfully, I was healed. I'm better. I'm still dealing with some residual stuff, but I'm good. I'm healthy. I'm about as healthy as I can be. I need to work out a little bit more, but all things considered, I'm very healthy. I used to think, well, why me? Why, this is, everyone else is off having fun, living their best life in high school and college. And here I am kind of feeling like I'm on my deathbed. But I was able to recover from it. And looking back at it now, there was a lot of good that came out of it. So while it was traumatic for me, I missed out on a lot. I lost like 70, 80 pounds. I was like a walking bag of bones. It was gross. I was anemic, all this stuff. When I did recover, it really helped me really appreciate the how precious and how invaluable good health is, for one thing.
Yeah.
And it also helped me empathize with other people who are dealing with, who did deal with some very difficult health issues or are currently going through some health issues. One big example is when I met my wife, when we were probably just a couple months after we were dating. She found out that she had a tumor in her brain. Thank God it wasn't cancerous, but it needed to be removed because it was affecting some nerves on her face, and she was actually starting to go deaf in one of her ears. So she had brain surgery to have it removed. It was very successful. But there was, leading up to that surgery and the long multiple years worth of recovery. I don't think that I like to think that I would be able to have been a good support to her. I think I would have been.
Yeah.
But knowing what I went through and how hard it was for me, I think I was so much. It was I was able to empathize and help her so much more than if I didn't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You had a different perspective of it based on what your own life experience was.
Yeah.
Not that you wished you had gone through.
Certainly don't.
You never wish that on anybody.
Right.
And you're never glad that you went through it. But it did give you a different perspective than like I had in that situation.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate that I've been relatively healthy my entire life, and I haven't really had any major medical.
He always
encounters.
points out to me that he's always has the clean
bill of health.
Marvelous clean bill of health and perfect teeth and all this stuff.
Well, I can speculate and I can imagine what it might be like to go through a major medical issue. At the end of the day, I haven't really been in those shoes.
Right.
So you have a much different perspective of it than even I would.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, it's not that you're glad that you went through it. Maybe on some levels you are because it gives you perspective, but it's not that you're so thankful and glad and happy that you went through it. But it's something. Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't want to do it again.
Right.
Nor would you wish anyone to have to go through that. But but you're able to integrate that in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Learn from it, and it gives you the ability to empathize with others that go through it.
I know this is gonna make me sound really shallow, but I don't know that if I hadn't gone through that, I don't know that my wife and I would be together. Because it was very, very early on in our dating relationship. We dated for a full year before we got engaged, but this was like maybe like a month.
Yeah, I remember
a month or two after after we started dating, and we were still just getting to know each other. And she moved in with myself and my family, and she felt like she tried pushing me away. because like you don't need to, you shouldn't be a part of this, you
Yeah.
go live your life type of a thing. And I'm like, no, I know what it was like when I went through this stuff.
Mhm.
I'm going to stick with you.
Yeah.
But I like to think that I would still have stuck with it, but I don't know, because
Yeah.
I hadn't really dealt with something that significant before.
Right.
And so I think it's a big reason why I'm actually married today.
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah.
it could. I mean, who knows? I hope that doesn't make me sound too shallow or weak or whatever. But that's just kind of how I
Yeah.
like to look at it. Like, I'm thankful that I went through it, even though for so many years I was not thankful.
I'm sure you would still be together today. But
Probably.
it just gave you, I think, it gave you a deeper understanding.
Yeah, that's a good way to put
deeper
it.
understanding of what she was going through.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's a good. We'll say that I was
Yeah.
much more able to empathize with her.
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts or any comments about that stuff?
No, the only thing I would just say is the whole idea of this, when I was talking about this, and really the nonStatic newsletter is an opportunity for me just to kind of explore different ideas about what I'm thinking about. It's kind of like a journal that I send out to the world, so to speak, which is maybe scary to some people. But the point of this is never to minimize trauma that people are going through. If someone's going through severe trauma in their life, the whole goal of this particular article was not to minimize that and say, well, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just go on and smile about it. That's not what this is about at all. It's what this is really designed to is give us perspective about things, ups and downs that we have gone through in life. Like I said before, life is challenging, and we're all faced with our own unique set of challenges in life, some good, some bad, and some in between. But the goal of this is just to make sure that we maintain perspective in a healthy way.
You know what? Yeah, it's important to understand though too, as well, and to piggyback on that. Like, it is a very challenging. Like, whether you're constantly being bullied, or you're in an abusive relationship, or you have a traumatic injury, or any other type of a really significant event, that is just a small part of your life as a whole, and there's so much more to live for. When it seems like there's no way, when there seems like there's no way out, or there's no way to improve things, or for your life to get better, I promise you there is a way, and there's many people who are available to help. People like us. We also own Inspire Services. We're a mental health and substance use company. If you are struggling with mental health or addiction, and you just need someone to talk to about some traumatic experiences, give us a call. Check out our website. If you're feeling like you may not want to be here tomorrow, by all means call the suicide prevention hotline. It's 988. Or call, really honestly, if you're having those thoughts, call a medical provider and say, I think I need some help. I think I need to be watched for a while. And they will get you connected with people who can help you and love on you and help you process this very difficult time in your life. So life is no matter how hard life is, no matter how scary life is, it's always worth living.
Yep.
Always.
I would just add that everybody has value.
Everybody has value.
Regardless of what people are going through, just know that you have value in life, and everybody has something to bring to this world, to contribute, and everyone deserves to be well. Right.
You have something to offer to the world, and don't deprive the rest of us of what you have to offer. One thing I want to, we're starting to get a lot of really good feedback from your nonStatic brand, and I just want to read something that this stuff really is making a good impact in some ways that we haven't really thought. Like you said, it was kind of like a journal that you're just kind of sending out to the world, just some perspective. So we have a wide variety of users that can, just regular John and Jane Does out in the streets, friends, family, strangers, obviously. case managers from human services departments, that kind of thing, and other therapists and counselors as well. One feedback that we got that I thought was really, really cool, I just wanted to read, was this case manager said, I love this, and is going to use this analogy of wet cement with their clients. This person also said, it also works for me to remember not to focus on the fact that I had cancer, but instead focus on all of the blessings that came with it, such as she had insurance coverage. They found the cancer early, and they had a very supportive family, a supportive work team, etc. And most of all, this person's cancer free. When there is traumatic experiences, when there is tracks going through your wet cement, it may seem like your world is coming to an end. Everything's falling down around you, but it's not. It's there may be some terminal issues that you have to deal with. I mean, we're humans.
Right.
We're all terminal.
Right.
But you still do have value, and there's a purpose for you to go through that. You just may not know it yet until after you're through that valley.
Yep.
So
again, it's hard when you're going through a valley or when you're going through a difficult time. It's hard to put things in perspective sometimes. And when you're going through the thick of it, it's hard. It is admittedly very difficult to have perspective sometimes.
Right.
But my encouragement is to know that I believe people are resilient, and I believe in the resiliency of people, and that if people can just not just get over, but if people can get through the challenges that they're facing or the difficulties that they're facing, typically the other side of it is something very beautiful.
Right. Well said. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said about that. Yes, until next time for sure. Any clues onto what your next topic's going to be about, Josh?
Inventory specialists.
Inventory specialist.
Yep.
The good doctor says we talked about wet cement today, and then inventory specialist.
Yep. Inventory specialist.
Well, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited to hear about that. So I think that kind of wraps it up for today. As you guys know, we're nonStatic. Josh has bi-weekly. Josh writes a nonStatic newsletter delivered right to your inbox. His goal is to make sure that it's a newsletter that you're not going to put to junk mail or unsubscribe from or just delete.
Hopefully.
It's and we've had an extremely successive open rate. I think we're like over 67%, which is abnormally high. So what that means is that people are getting stuff in it, and they're actually looking forward to it, and they're actually learning from it. So kudos to you, Josh, on that.
Well, thanks to all 7 of you out there.
It's more than that. I promise you that. Keep track of the numbers. So we're looking to bring this to other platforms because we really want to bring this to as many people as possible because there is a lot of value to it. And so just tune in to go to nonstatic.org to sign up for Josh's newsletter. Go to inspireservicesllc.com if you want to check out our other company and some of the services that we provide, and to potentially get some help if you need it. And go ahead and have a great week, and we'll talk to you later.
Enjoy the journey, guys.
Take care.